Good afternoon, good evening, everyone, for challenge day 8. Today we are going to talk about something a lot more technical than yesterday's topic, which was the more mindset topic. But today we are going to talk about setting up for lunges. So lunges are one of the lower body push exercises. Basically, that just means that they're targeting mostly our quadriceps. Our glutes and our hamstrings are also going to work when we lunge. But lunges are, while they're a basic exercise, they are a little bit trickier. And if you have had any knee issues or if you have any balance issues, then lunges can be really tricky to do properly or without pain. So I've got a couple cues for you guys to set up your lunges properly so that they feel really good. Now, I understand that my definition of what feels good, like you might be like, oh, a massage would feel good, and I'm like, lunges feel good. Just humor me. This is like trainer feeling good, okay? So when we set up our lunges, we want to think that we want to feel the work in our quadriceps and a little bit in our glutes. It's mostly going to be in our quads, okay? So on the fronts of our legs here. What we don't want to feel is pain in our knees. Now, it's really normal, especially if you haven't been lunging very much, to feel some tension in your knees or even like creaking or just like they haven't done that range of motion in a while. That is okay, and maybe a sign where that we're not going to lift really heavy, that we're just going to really practice the movement. But if we're feeling lots of pain or tweaking or like ripping or sharp pains in our knees, then lunges are not going to be the best choice for you. And you can absolutely do squats or goblet squats or sumo squats, or any squat variation is a really good substitute for lunges if you're going to try all of these tips that I'm going to give you to set up your lunges properly. If you're still feeling pain in your knees, then you can revert back to a squat instead of a lunge every time you see it on the program, okay? So lunges are the first exercise for Strength Workout 2, which we did live last Sunday. And the biggest thing that I want you to remember about when you're setting up your lunge is that it is not about being on a tightrope, okay? So we should never have one foot behind the other. We always want our feet to be hip width distance apart. So when you're lunging, if you have access to a mirror, that's awesome. You can lunge facing the mirror or even from the side and assess that you're on train tracks, okay? So each of your feet are about hip width distance apart. You're not on a tightrope like this. It's gonna make your lunge next to impossible. It'll be really, really wiggly and a lot harder for you to balance if you're doing one foot behind each other. So make sure that your feet are staggered in that hip width distance apart stance, okay? When we do our lunge, most of the weight is going to be on the front leg. So I like to say 70% of the weight's on the front leg, 30% of the weight is on the back leg. The front leg is the working leg in your lunge. The back leg is just there kind of for a kickstand. So you do want to have a slight tilt forward at the hip. So we're not rounding through the back, but it's a slight tilt forward. This helps to load that front leg, helps to load the glutes, and help when the glutes and the front leg are loaded properly, then our knee is not going to feel as much work or as much pain. So just like we do when we're doing any of our squat movements, we want our knees to track in line with like our second toe. So our knees shouldn't be dumping in when we're coming up out of our lunge. The knees should not be wiggling in or out. Imagine there's like an imaginary fit ball, like this, just imagine, on the outside of your knee, and you're actively pushing into that imaginary fit ball when you're standing up to the top of your lunge. It just gives a little bit of feedback to the lateral part of the leg, and that helps to activate the lateral hips, which keeps your knee in that tracking in line in a strong movement, and then we're not going to have this internal kind of dumping of the knees when we're lunging, okay? So once you've set yourself up in your staggered stance like so, I just have a mat here on the floor so I can show you. You literally want to do that slight tilt forward so that there's more weight on the front foot, and you do not need to come down this far, but I'm just going to show you for setting up sake. You're gonna sink your hips down. I'm just gonna rest my back knee all the way onto the ground for the purposes of this video. It should feel like when you're here in this lunge position that your butt is working quite a bit. So you're pushing your heel of your front foot into the ground. Your knee is not dumping inwards. This is what I mean by imagining that there's a football right here and you're pushing into that kind of side of the football. You'll feel your glutes work even more. 70% of the weight on this front leg, 30% on the back leg. Your core is nice and strong. You're gonna exhale and stand all the way up, okay? So when you're doing your lunges, you don't need to touch your back knee to the ground, right? You're setting yourself up, your staggered stance, not on a tightrope, you're on train tracks, a little bit more weight in that front leg, maybe you've got dumbbells at your sides, you're sinking down into your lunge and then you're standing up. So most of your weight on that front leg and then standing up. When you set up this way, purposefully with that slight tilt forward, you should feel a lot of work through your glutes and your quadriceps, okay? So this would be a static lunge where I'm not standing all the way up with my feet together. You can absolutely lunge together and then switch legs, get set up, lunge back, stand together. That's a great option too. But one of the things that you need to be careful of when you're switching legs as you go is that you don't put too much weight on your back leg. So lots of times what I see happening when people are lunging is they lunge like this, right? Maybe they're taking this leg back and they stand here. So then they go down to lunge and now it's like 50% of the weight on the back leg, 50% on the front, or even 60 and 40. I want it 70% on the front lunging leg, 30% on the back lunging leg. Then I'm going to get all the right muscles, which is your quads and your glutes, doing the work. When that knee is imagining pushing out into that football, it's not like you're doing this with your knees. It's just a little bit of awareness that your knee is not dumping in. Then you're not going to feel pain on the insides of your knee. Remember, if you still do feel pain on the insides of your knee, maybe a squat is a really good option for you to do instead. Lunges aren't going to be for everyone. Not every exercise is going to fit your specific body, your specific injury history, and what works for you. So lunges are a great exercise if we can make them work with cues so that the proper muscles do the work. There's tons of variations of lunges. So I just showed you the static lunge, right, where we're going down and up like so. There's also the reverse lunge when you're stepping back, switching legs, stepping back. There's walking lunges when you're lunging forward, standing together, lunging forward, standing together. If you're doing the walking lunge or any lunge where you're stepping forward, you want to make sure that you get a good heel strike onto the ground, that you don't step too far forward, and that you remember that lunging is a down and up movement. It's not a forward and back movement, okay? So we get in a lot of trouble when we lunge forward and we do this. Lunging forward like so, lunging forward. Instead, we want to step forward, lunge down, lunge up, and stand back. The reason for that is when we make it a forward and back movement, which is what we don't want to do, all the force is going out through the front of our knee, right? If we take this nice step forward, then we lunge down, then we stand up, and then we move back, the force goes down and up. We use our glutes and our quads instead of our knee joint as much, okay? So, quick recap for setting up your lunges. You're not on a tightrope, you're on train tracks. So we want to make sure our feet are hip width distance apart. Number 2, you got that slight lean forward so that there's more weight on your front leg. Your back leg has about 30% of the weight, front leg has about 70% of the weight. You imagine a little football or something squishy on the outside of the front knee, that you're pushing into it slightly so that the knee is not dumping inwards. Then finally, we make sure that our lunge, regardless of how we're setting it up, is a down and up movement, not a forward and back movement, okay? Even if you do your lunges perfectly and you use all these cues that I'm giving you, they're still gonna feel really hard. I've been lunging for years. It's one of my favorite exercises, and I'm even out of breath right now while I'm just doing a couple reps at a time. They're a great exercise for your quads, for your glutes, for your core, for balance. They get lots of muscle groups working at the same time, which increases our heart rate, gives us a little bit of conditioning benefits too. So lunges show up a lot in the programs that I write because they are a fabulous exercise for your legs and glutes. I hope that you like them even a little bit and that these tips have been helpful. Remember, make sure to write in your questions. If you try these tips when you're at home doing your lunges and they don't work for you, if you're feeling pain in your knees, if you're feeling pain in your low back, if you don't feel your quads and glutes working, or you feel like you just need a little bit more of a tweak, you've got options. You can take a picture of yourself lunging. You can video yourself lunging and post it on the group. I'd be happy to give you some constructive criticism about how to lunge better. Or if you just want to type in and say where you're feeling pain, I've done a lot of lunge coaching with people, so I could probably help to give you some more tips to make them feel better. And by better, I mean muscle fatigue in the right places, not like better as in a bubble bath, because we all know that's not happening when we're lunging. So have a wonderful evening and rest of your weekend. Please type in your questions as they come up, even if you're watching this after the fact. And I will see you tomorrow morning for 9 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. So that would be 8 a.m. Pacific time for everyone out on the coast for our second live workout. So tomorrow morning, Saturday, August 19th, we are going to do live workout, strength workout number 1 all together. I'm going to be doing it with you, counting the reps, coaching you through it, giving you tons of tips as we go, and some breaks too. And that'll be really fun because the first one was awesome. So hope to see you there. I'll be sure to post another reminder on the group about that. And enjoy your Friday night. Talk to you soon.